Welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast, where we continue our exploration of South Florida's entrepreneurial landscape with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries guide you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph, sharing the very stories that have shaped them.
Sam Zietz, welcome to Locality Bank's Making Bank podcast.
Well, glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely. And, so this is our first time in a different location. So, I mean, you could be welcoming us maybe instead, we're turning the tables today. We're on your home court. We're just talking sports. So that would be Michigan if we were playing a sport today.
Diehard Wolverine. And as I give you a tour later of the facility, you'll see a lot of maize and blue in the facility here.
Great. Well, we're really happy to be talking with you today. I mean, you were an early investor in Locality Bank, and we thank you for, supporting our cause, which is to empower local companies to maximize their potential. And you've been a part of that. So thank you for that and your support. As I looked at your resume and what you've accomplished, I was just thinking to myself, we could not have someone with more of an entrepreneurial background, but the dichotomy was so interesting because you started off on such a traditional trajectory. So there's a lot that I'm looking forward to talking with you about today. And also this facility is just incredible. So we're so happy, thank you for hosting us here today. So we'll just start off talking about where you grew up and your family and your family members and what it was like in your household growing up.
Sure. I was born in Detroit. I was born while they were burning the city down, literally, because I was born 2 days after they assassinated Martin Luther King. So it was a crazy
69,
time.
69, right?
68.
68, okay.
Yeah. It was a tough time in Detroit at the time, but I grew up there, kind of lower middle class. My father managed an appliance store there for a chain. And from the time I was 14, normally kids in high school, that type of age, they would put them in the warehouse to work stock. But I was really small at the time. I was very small. So they're like, the TV boxes back then were bigger than me. So they're like, all right, we're going to put you in.
They're a lot heavier too, right? Actually.
Lot heavier, yeah. I've moved many TV boxes. But they decided to put me in sales. And that was probably one of the greatest gifts I ever received because I was a pretty introverted person. And here they put this 14-year-old in sales. And I quickly realized that this is on commission. So you make as much as you can earn. And if you help more people and you close more business, you make more money. So when, the people that were working there at the time, because I would work after hours. So after
And was this
school,
in your father's store?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
He managed it. It was a brand, kind of like a Best Buy, but
sure,
back then. And, the other salespeople were, late 20s, early 30s. They'd all go back and get smoke breaks. And they'd be like, hey, if you need help, come get us. Well, I realized I could help 2 or 3 or 4 people at the same time, and I would handle all of that. And turned out I was pretty good, and I learned how to negotiate. I learned how to interact with customers and find out what they're looking for, so that I could fit, whatever they needed with the right solution. So, early on, I got that desire to want more and to want to I saw what other people had and saw this as a path to success. So I spent a lot of time, working as many hours as they would let me, even though I was still, in high school. So I would work after school, and I would work on the weekends, and then Christmas I would work every hour the store was open, during Christmas break. So I'd work 100 plus hours, and it was great.
Wow. So a tremendous work ethic at an early age, it sounds like.
Yeah. I learned the hard work. My father, managed like I said, appliance chain. So his busiest days were the weekends. So he was never home on the weekends. His days off were Tuesdays and Thursdays, which were notoriously the 2 slowest days in retail.
Interesting.
So, when I grew up, he wasn't really there for like the weekend sporting events or things because he had to work. But, when I was old enough, I was in the office, in the store working, and, I'd see a lot of them over there.
Sure. So then when you get older, you graduate high school and you go on to college, how did you make those kind of decisions?
So we were talking about being an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I always figured you needed one of two things. You either needed money or you needed know-how. I had no money, so I figured I better go get some know-how. So after working for a few years in the appliance, space, so I graduated college, I ended up working at the same company, and quickly rose. As soon as I graduated, they promoted me to manager, and I was on that path. And the company ended up going bankrupt. And at that time, I had offers from all the other chains to go and work for them. But here I was, 24, 25. I had already basically, gotten to the quote pinnacle of that, of that arena. And so I thought, okay, if I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to go in the business, I don't have any money, I better go get some know-how. So I decided to go back to school, and I went and got my law degree. Actually enrolled down here in Miami at St. Thomas. Mm-hmm. And, I remember going there and having a different attitude to school. So I had broken down tuition at that time. It was $484 an hour. So I'm like, I'd go into class each day with the attitude of, I need to learn something that's worth $484 because that's what I just spent for it. So they would get mad at me because any day that the professor would cancel class, I'd walk up and ask for a refund. That's a whole another story.
So so did you just come to Miami for school? Is that how you came to South Florida?
I came to South Florida. It's an area that I wanted to move to. My grandparents were in Florida.
Okay.
So I was targeting a Florida school, and I ended up there. Ended up transferring and I did a joint JD LLM program and spent my third year at NYU. So I also have a postdoctorate degree in LLM and taxation from the New York University School of Law, and ended up getting a job in New York post graduation. So, I was a tax attorney by trade, ended up working at a firm called Coopers & Lybrand, which within the first year I was there, merged with Price Waterhouse, and it became PricewaterhouseCoopers. And they had a different attitude on how to compensate attorneys. So coming out, it was my first semester in law school, or my third year in law school, they make offers. So they made an offer, and they offered the same amount as the top 10 law firms. So I was like, this is great, I'm not going to make any more money, and I've already got a job. It'll take all the pressure off the third year. So I ended up joining Coopers. They merged. So based on that, I ended up leaving and ended up going to Skadden Arps. Skadden Arps, very large law firm. At the time, it was the largest law firm in the world. Probably still are the largest law firm. Their biggest, what they're known for is of the 100 largest M&A deals in U.S. history. At the time I was there, they represented one side or the other in 99 of them. So they invented the corporate takeover, and it was an unbelievable experience. So I was doing structured finance there, securitizing income streams.
And in what years was that?
I was there from 97 through 99.
Wow. So there was a lot going on, obviously, at that time.
There was a lot going on. For those that saw the movie The Big Short, that's a lot of the stuff that I was working on was a lot of things that, quote, brought the country down during the economic crisis. But it was interesting times. We were working on the largest deals in the world, and developed a skill set and thought to myself, okay, I'm securitizing income streams. How do I go get one for myself?
Interesting.
And that's ultimately how I found the payment processing space.
Wow. So while you're working at this, which one of the most prestigious law firms in the world, so while you're working there, you're thinking still, how do I become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Now, the great gift about working at Skadden is every year you're there, they're kind enough to give you 3 years of experience.
Yeah, you're working.
Yeah, because you're working 120 hours a week, but you do learn very, very rapidly. It's funny, my daughter recently spent a couple years working in investment banking at Goldman, and she had a very similar experience of working 100 to 120 hours a week, but the depth of her knowledge accelerated. So.
Right. Interesting.
I think, early on in someone's career, being able to have that gift of it accelerates. It's no different than investing money. If you invest more early, the accumulation of interest will compound. Well, experience compounds as well. So the more experience you can get early, the compounding factor pays out later in your career.
That's very profound. And I would say that's a quote we need to highlight because I've never thought about knowledge in the same way that I think about money, right? But you're very right. And the compound interest is a great analogy to learning those things early on that you can take advantage of in your career.
Yeah. So those students, that's why I think it's horrible for people coming out of college today and then working remote. I'm like, oh, there's nothing more that you could do to sabotage your career than to work remote,
And I can see, like, if I came here every day, I would love it, right? I mean, you've built an office here that's so adaptable to everybody that, it's probably nicer than a lot of people's homes, right? I mean, you're going to want to come in here to work.
It was by design, right?
Yeah.
We wanted a place that people would want to come in because the magic happens when people are able to collaborate together. That's where creativity comes from. And we wanted to put a facility in place that fosters that.
Great. So the payment space, how does that, as you're working at Skadden, and how do you arrive on that as something to pursue?
So at the time, I was doing structured finance, securitizing income streams, and I had an idea to be able to provide working capital to restaurants and other small businesses by utilizing their future credit card receipts as an asset to securitize. I had everything figured out other than I needed to figure out how to securitize the credit cards. So I started doing some research, got connected to a friend who worked for a payment processor as a CPA. And the more I learned about the payment processing industry at the time, to me, it was very, very similar to the cell phone industry just 20 years later. So I'm a big, history buff. History always repeats itself. And for me, it was like having a crystal ball to know where the industry was going to go over the next 10 to 20 years. And sure enough, it played out exactly as I thought it would play out. So what I mean by that is when cell phones first came out, they were very expensive. And then one of the cell phone providers said, you know what, we're making a lot of money off this service. Why don't we just sell the cell phones at cost? And then somebody looked at it and said, you know what, we're making so much money off the service. Why don't we just give them the damn phones for free? And basically we applied that same methodology to the credit card terminals and processing. At the time, credit card terminals, business owners would have to lease them at very high rates, $100, $150 a month, typically for a 4-year lease. And then we started coming out and selling these for $299. And this was the beginning of the internet. So we would advertise online and people would go to their local bank and they would turn them into a representative who would tell them that they'd have to pay, $150 a month for 4 years. And then they'd, this is before Google, but they would go on and search this and they would see us selling it for $299. So they would call us up and they would be like, why is yours so cheap? And we're like, it's not that we're so cheap. It's just everybody else is really expensive and they're trying to take advantage of you. It's not that we're buying it that much better. It's just we're not taking advantage of you. They're like, can we just buy the terminal? We're like, sure, you can just buy the terminal, But if they're doing that to you on the terminal, what do you think they're doing to you on your rates and your fees? And they're like, oh, that's a good idea. So they would sign up for us.
Nice.
So early on, we ended up signing up lots of customers. We were very early onto the internet and online advertising at the time. It was Overture was the search engine, was the place that you would advertise. It was Yahoo was the biggest search engine at the time.
So who was we? So you weren't doing this at Skadden. So you founded a new company. Tell us that story.
Yeah. So my wife was pregnant with my oldest daughter, and at that time I'm like, okay, we went and bought a house in New Jersey at the time in the suburbs, moved out in New York City and bought 2 cars all in 30 days and started to do the research. And then when the time my son was born is when we were starting to build the business. Now,
and was this TouchSuite or is it?
This is what this TouchSuite today.
Okay.
So we started the business up in the New York area.
Mm-hmm.
My son was born we were doing the construction for the build out. And then, so our construction crew was from Queens. So they would come over on the bridge and they would do the construction in this little suburb in New Jersey called Haledon. That's where we started the business. And one day while they were starting the build out, all of a sudden the towers get hit.
Oh.
So I had to put them up for 3 days. So we literally started our business right in the middle of it. So here we are, we're doing the build out. We got F-15s flying overhead we're like, okay, great time to start a business.
Oh my God.
So for entrepreneurs out there, there's never a perfect time. And in fact, it's probably still the right statistic, but most entrepreneurism starts during in recessions and in times like that.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get a job somewhere else, you start one on your own. Now here we happen to have been in the middle of doing that. But my son was born 2 weeks later.
Wow.
So that's when we started the business. So, I kind of tell the story. If you saw the movie like 300, burn the boats, there's no retreat. At the time I left a very high paying job with a prestigious law firm and there was no plan B. I had 2 children, 15 months and under. My parents didn't have money. My in-laws didn't have money. So success was the only option. So I figured at that point, if I worked, 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, that was the equivalent of having 3 high-priced executives that I didn't have to pay for. So literally I wore 100 hats and started every facet of the business. So from, 9 till 8, because you could call West Coast. We learned that you call till 5 o'clock on the East Coast, then you call Central until 6, Mountain till 7, and you call the West Coast till 8. So I had figured out that we needed to do 20 deals a month to break even. So I said, okay, you break, the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. So we said, okay, you have to do 20 deals a month. There's 20 business days in a month. I just have to do a deal a day and I'll break even. But I said, if I do 1 deal every day, I'm guaranteed to get 20. Some days you're going to have a good day. You'll do 2, you'll do 3, do 4, 5. But that doesn't mean the next day you're covered. The next day you have to do it again. So I made a rule to myself that said, every day I will do a deal or I won't go home. So every day in our company's history, we've done at least 1 deal. Once I had to stay until 11:30 and write a deal in Alaska, and once it was 12:30 in the morning to Hawaii. But every day in our company's history, we've done. Now, obviously, it's much easier now. I have large teams, and now we even do deals in Thanksgiving because we have operations in Canada. So their Thanksgiving's different than our Thanksgiving. So it's great. I'm like, oh, even on Thanksgiving, we're doing business.
Yeah.
So, it was there was no plan B. So it was you needed to use brute force. And one of the things I tell people, it's not sustainable, but early on, brute force can get you through a lot of, obstacles.
I guess brute force and persistence and just and obviously you really believed in what you were doing, which I've heard that from a lot of entrepreneurs. I know we feel it ourselves, having done what we've done with banks. if you really believe in what you're doing, it kind of sustains you. Like, so you're doing something. You saw an opportunity there to really help businesses, and you could make a lot of money doing it. So, I mean, that's a win-win.
Yeah. Every relationship, in my opinion, has to be a win-win. If not, it's a short-term or it's a transactional relationship. So sure, if I'm trying to sell my house, I'm going to try to sell it to you at the highest price possible, regardless, because it's a one-time transaction. I'm never going to sell you another house. It's my house. That's it. That's all I've got. But every one of our partners, we will make sure that it's a win-win deal, because I'd rather make less today, but I'll make it forever. Because if I do right by you, then we've got a long-term relationship, and that'll just expand over time.
Well, that's great advice for anybody trying to build and scale a business, to think about that in every transaction going forward, right? It's
funny. I learned that early on when I was a early attorney. I got engaged. So when you get engaged, you go buy a diamond. So I was in New York. Well, the epicenter of diamonds is 47th Street. So I'm like, all right, I don't have a lot of money, so let me go do my research. So I did all my research. I bought the wholesale guide, Rappaport. I figured out, I knew exactly what the wholesale on every type of diamond was. And I went around to all the different shops. And, everybody was trying to make as much as they could. But this one guy gave me a really good deal. And he was smart, because who do first-year attorneys know? Lots of other first-year attorneys. And what are young attorneys generally doing? They're probably all getting married pretty soon. So over the years, I introduced them to over 20 people who ended up going and buying diamond rings from him. So he ended up making, less, but he made it on ultimately hundreds and hundreds of transactions, because then those became birth gifts and everything else. So I'll never forget when my oldest daughter was born, my wife went in to get her ears pierced, and went to get diamond earrings for her, just little diamond studs. And she went in, and Anthony, the guy that owned the shop, picked out a pair with her, and she goes, okay, well, how much are these? He's like, they're free. Because we had sent him so much business over the years, he's like, no, these are on me.
Wow.
But he understood the value of a long-term relationship. So every relationship we try to enter, we try to do it with a win-win. Actually, another friend of mine, shared a story. Doug Brown. So Doug used to be the CEO of Enterprise Rent-A-Car.
Oh, wow.
So he was the one that decided to take it from one location to the largest rent-a-car chain in the world. And he would be the largest purchaser of cars every year. And every negotiation, he could get his way because he was going to buy more cars than anybody. But he would always give something back at the end. He's like, what was one thing that you asked for you didn't get? And he would give it back to them. Well, I started applying that, and it really, really works. In a negotiation, when, because of your leverage, you might be able to overreach and get more. But if you then give something back that's really was something that was important to the other side that you could live with, you build huge goodwill. And if it's a long-term relationship, it pays off exponentially.
That's very interesting, because, on the diamond purchase, you could think, well, you're only getting married once, right? So that guy could have thought, well, I'm never going to see this guy again. So, but he took it to, that other level and thought about, hey, if I take care of him, he knows a lot of other people. That's great. Another great lesson.
Yeah, and that's why, people use things like the Net Promoter Score.
Yeah.
Because, if somebody gives you a 9 or 10, that means they're a promoter. So you might be happy with your service, but are you going out of your way to tell others about this company, this service, this person? So when you get a 9 or a 10 on an NPS score, those are evangelists. Those are people who are going to sing your praises, and you're going to get referrals and business and everything else.
Yeah.
Corollary is if you do a poor job, that's a detractor, and then everybody else fits in the middle. I'm not going to do an NPS, pitch here, but
right.
The point is you want to have as many evangelists for your business and whatever you're providing, because you can't point to it, but it just ends up paying out in the long term.
So you get started in payments. You're doing a deal a day or more every day, or you don't go home, which is, I mean, think about that. If you're running a business and you commit to a goal like that, I think that's incredible advice. And so you build the company up, and how does it go? You start at 9/11 and then you get going, and how does it go from there? And let me ask you one other thing I forgot to ask. Did you fund all this yourself?
Yeah. Bootstrap the business.
Yeah.
So, and it's a quote negative cash flow business. So that's where that brute force comes in.
Yeah.
We ended up getting, non-traditional financing early on until we were, we could explain to banks that we were a better asset than receivable, just traditional AR.
Yeah.
I'm like, we have annuities, each customer just pays us month after month after month. So that's better than somebody that's going to pay you once. We built the business, and we always try to figure out a way of separating ourselves from the competition. And what I mean by that is I've always had this philosophy of having multiple revenue sources off one cost structure. So early on, we would provide credit card terminals at a very low rate, and then we would sell like refurbished credit card terminals. So who were we competing with at that time? We were competing with the other companies that refurbish credit card terminals and the companies that sold those. And then there were processors who would buy it from them. So we kind of disintermediated, and we didn't need to make money on the sale of the credit card terminal because we were going to make money on the processing. Mm-hmm. So we could provide the terminals at a much lower price to the businesses because we would monetize off that recurring revenue stream. So that's something we did early on. Later, we ended up getting into the business of providing working capital to businesses. And we had competitors who would also do that, but they only did that. So again, if we used all the money to originate that deal to cover the revenue that we received from providing the working capital, it left us with a very valuable merchant processing account with no cost to acquire. Mm-hmm. So we did that. And then later we started to get into technology and developing our own technology solutions. And again, we had competitors selling technology, but they needed to make a certain margin, and we could monetize it off the payment processing, so we could provide value-based solutions to people at a much more affordable or at no cost.
So, and then one of the other businesses you get into is GRUBBRR.
Yes.
Right. And so how did you happen to get into that?
So I'm in an organization called YPO, and someone in YPO referred me to Bhavin Asher, who is our CTO and founder. And at the time, Bhavin had created a basic POS and a basic self-ordering kiosk. And I met him the beginning of November of 2018. He came up, we were on the other side of the building at the time, but he came up and I looked at this and I was like, this is the future. And my wife, who is probably the most conservative person, literally when she grew up, her father kept the money in the freezer. No joke. It was in the freezer.
It's cold cash.
Yeah, no, I mean, Cuban family, that's what you do. You know. So she looked at this and she's like, if we lose a couple $1 million on this investment, I'm good. She saw it. So I'm like, wow, if she's gung-ho on this and she says she doesn't like anything, this is something.
Wow.
So we both had that shared vision that the cashier was going to become obsolete. And in fact, if you look, the government just came out with jobs that will be disappearing, and the number one job disappearing from the world will be cashiers.
Wow.
And we said, okay.
How are bankers doing? Are they still on the...
Well, I'll give you an analogy,
yeah.
Right? Back in the day, there were a lot of tellers.
Yeah.
Most of those tellers don't exist today.
That's
They've
true.
been replaced by online banking and ATMs.
Yeah.
Yet banks have more employees today than they had back then. The difference is the employees at banks today are providing more solutions to solve problems for businesses and consumers. They're not just doing something mindless as a clerical teller,
Yeah.
right? They're helping them in a whole bunch of other facets of their life or their business. And it's a more meaningful job, and it's a more highly compensated job than what it was as a teller.
Sure.
So that same analogy is what we saw 7 years ago with cashiers.
Yeah.
Nobody aspires to be a cashier. You don't go to high school and go, well, when I grow up, I want to be a cashier. No, it's at the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people have done it. In fact, a lot of successful people through high school, that's where they got their first job, was working as a cashier. But in the country today, we have a negative birth rate. We have a tightened immigration policy. We don't have enough labor. So it's not a matter of displacing labor. There are restaurants today that are either closed, limited hours, or limited capacity because they don't have enough people to service the customers. So at GRUBBRR, we might not solve 100% of the problem, but we do solve 50%. We solve the front of the house. Now, when you look at this, we said, okay, this is going to be 5, 10, 20 years from now. So we said, we'll start building the business today, and we'll pay the idiot tax. We'll learn along the way, and when the time comes, we'll know more than everybody else. Little did we know, global pandemic, Great Resignation, $15 an hour minimum wages, all of these things dramatically impacted restaurant owners, right? There's only three major costs to a restaurant. There's the food costs. Nothing you can do. That's literally a commodity.
Right.
The only thing you can do is downgrade the quality of your ingredients, which as a consumer, I really hope they don't do.
Right.
Second is rent. Well, if you don't pay the market rent, they'll put a yoga studio in there, so you can't do anything about that. And the third is labor. How do you become more efficient? And that we can help with, and that we can solve. So we said, okay, let's not do the POS system, because if we're correct and the cashier is going to disappear, then the traditional point of sale system will also disappear. So let's focus on where the world is going, not where the world is at. And that's why we went in and said, okay, we're going to build the absolute best kiosk solution. We'll integrate to all of the major POS systems, all the payment providers, all the loyalty providers, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result, when all of these things happened, COVID and Great Resignation, and all these big companies came out and said, okay, we need a solution, all roads pointed to GRUBBRR. And as a result, we're partnered with the largest providers in the world. NCR is the largest point of sale provider in the world. They have over 30% global market share, and they exclusively sell our product globally.
Wow.
Verifone is the largest credit card terminal manufacturer. They exclusively sell our product. We work with Fiserv and Square and Toast and PAR and Oracle and all these other companies. So, when they needed a solution, we provide that solution.
So you're happy with the success of GRUBBRR, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, did we know these things were going to happen? No. I mean, as an entrepreneur, the one thing I can guarantee is there's always going to be, something you didn't think of. Some of them are positive and some of them are negative. And you need to be able to withstand the negatives. And we've been through a lot of those, whether it was the Great, Recession, whether it's the pandemic. The pandemic, actually, I didn't sweat that much during the pandemic because I had been through the Great Recession. And coming through that, I already knew how to handle everything. So I had more of a calm than, I not had those experiences.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting because you think of like some of the young people now that are in business, never, they experienced that kind of, they were in high school or they were in elementary school and they never tasted that, which I think helps all of us. I mean, if you survive that, you learn something.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully you've applied that going forward and you're not, and you're prepared, although we hope nothing like that happens again, those things happen, like you're saying, and you've got to protect your flank, so to speak, as you go in business.
Yeah, you need to make sure that you can withstand those, because you can have the greatest business in the world, but if you get taken down, you're not there to reap the benefits when the tide changes.
So one thing that I wanted to touch on, because, I've been a banker for a long time, but most of my focus has always been more, I came up through the lending side and private banking, so more investments and lending. Never really had a lot of involvement in payments. And lately, I have been diving in because of crypto and everything that's going on with stablecoin. That kind of came out of, for a lot of bankers, were like, oh my God, what the hell's a stablecoin? And it's come, and here it is, like sailing through Congress, like faster than anything we've ever seen. And so, obviously a lot of money got that, greased the wheels for that. But regardless of that, it was like, we need to figure out what this is. And so, so where do you see that going in the future?
Look, crypto started out, filling a need that, existed. Look, I think we're going to go to a cashless society in our lifetime. There's a reason the largest U.S. denominated bill is $100. It's so that you can make it very difficult for illicit behavior not to be paid for in cash. Right? If you wanted to pay somebody $10 million, that's you're walking around with lots of duffel bags. Crypto makes it very easy to do that. That's how it started in a lot of manners. There's the altruistic reasons for it. It was interesting in its early stages. It's the one thing every government in the world was against. But then it had staying power, and it seems like it's winning out. And now, do I think crypto is going to eliminate, hard fiat currencies? No. Do I think it's going to be an alternative? Yeah, it's going to make a lot of things like cross-border transactions very economical. Before, it was costly and difficult from a process perspective if you wanted to send $1,000 from here to another country, or especially if there was a third world country. But with crypto, it's very easy to transfer that, and the costs can be very, very inexpensive. You're still in the early innings, so costs, and regulation, it's still kind of the Wild West. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest issue that the governments had was really on the, how do you regulate this? How do you prevent people from circumventing things? And that's why they're trying to get their hands around that. But the infrastructure itself, the concept, I think it's here to stay. The technology behind it is definitely here to stay. Blockchain and all of that is very, very real. Now, do I think 1,000 of these currencies are going to exist? No, I think you'll have a massive consolidation of that.
Do you think at some point, and that's kind of what I've heard talking with many companies that are involved in this, when do you see this coming to the point where people in restaurants are paying, or domestic payments are done on chain just because of the ease, simplicity, low cost, 24/7 nature?
Yeah. Well, the first component, and that's the reason for the stablecoin. Because without stablecoin, you want to go pay for a pizza. Great. The pizza is $10. And if, Bitcoin is here, that's easy. But, the U.S. currency, yes, it fluctuates, but, the dollar doesn't move that much compared to the euro.
Right.
One could make arguments, but it's moving 1% in a day would be a lot. It's not moving 100% in a day, where crypto can move. It's not as bad as it was a few years ago, but those swings are wild. So how do you price, something, and you're saying, okay, this is 1 Bitcoin. Well, the next day the price went up by 10x. So you had problems on how you would price things. If you have a stable coin that's tied to a fiat currency, you're able to set prices. So now businesses can accept and know what they're receiving, and then they can convert that into a different currency immediately. So they're not taking that risk.
Sure.
So that, it'd be no different than, a business in the U.S. taking, currency from Venezuela, that thing, or
Right.
Argentina, where it's just fluctuating wildly. Well, crypto was even more of a fluctuation than that.
Right.
So that was the problem that it had, and that's why you're seeing such a big push for stablecoin. As it pertains to our industry, it's just a transaction. We make money on clicks, whether it's a credit card, a debit card, an ACH, a gift card. It's just a click. And we facilitate those clicks and make sure that the money is transferred into the appropriate parties' accounts.
Sure. So anything else that you would like to share from you? As I said, and you also have done a TED Talk, right, on entrepreneurship.
Yes.
So people may want to check that out as well as the podcast. But tell us about how you happen to do that.
They reached out to me and said, hey, would you? They're coming and doing TED Talks in Boca. We would like you to speak. Back then, my biggest fear was public speaking.
Oh, wow.
So I said, all right, this seems like a good opportunity. If you're going to learn how to swim, jump into the deep end, right?
Yeah.
So I said, all right. So they actually get you a speech coach. So they assign me a speech coach. She comes to meet with me. And I say, okay, where are the teleprompters? They're like, there are no teleprompters. So my head of marketing goes, well, where's the podium? They're like, there is no podium. I go, what do I do with my note cards? They're like, you don't get note cards. so I'm like, oh boy. So, now, a guy who's got a fear of public speaking, I'm like, so like anything, I've taught this to my children and others, over prepare. So I did that speech. And by the way, I ended up doing a long one. The longest you can do is like 13 minutes. I did 13 minutes.
Okay.
I should have done like 6 minutes. But obviously from this podcast, you can see I can ramble on. So, and all they do give you, by the way, is a countdown clock, which makes it even worse.
Wow.
Because it's counting down and you're like, oh boy. So it's funny. I spent so much time preparing for this that both my older kids could do the speech better than I could.
Wow.
Mostly mocking me, but and it was funny because years later, and it worked out well. And it's so the moral to this story is the more you do something, the easier it gets, no matter what it is. And it's hard and you want to hate it, but you jump in and you do it and it sucks. And the next time it sucks a little less, and before you get comfortable. All right, now I'm for the last 4 months I've been cold plunging. Nobody looks forward to get into a cold plunge. Yeah. They look forward to getting out of the cold plunge. But there's a lot of great benefits to it. But once you start doing it, it becomes easier and easier. So my daughter, when she was young, she started a business and she was going to be on Shark Tank. And we said, all right, so what do? You got to over prepare. So I had her, she prepared everything. And then I was in YPO, so I had my forum, which is other CEOs of successful businesses in South Florida. She came in and they grilled her for 6 hours. Wow. And they just went at, I said, forget that she's a 14-year-old girl. I go, you just go at her. And they absolutely went at her. And by the time she went on Shark Tank, she came out and the first thing she said is, your friends were so much worse than this. This was like easy compared to that.
Wow.
But that's that's the secret to anything is being over prepared. And when I researched, public speaking and why people have a fear of public speaking, it's basically imposter syndrome. It's thinking that you don't know what you're saying. So how do you get over that? Damn well know everything you're saying. So if you know everything, no matter what somebody asks you, you've got the answer for it and you're prepared. So if you're over prepared in anything you do, there's nothing to be afraid of.
A lot of great advice, a lot of good tips for anybody out there. Anything that because we're getting ready to go to the lightning round, but before we do, anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to share with the audience? Any specific advice?
I'm always happy to talk on anything. I mean, my personal belief is entrepreneurism has built this country. It's the thing that separates us from everyone else. If you think it from the time of Carnegie, Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, Morgan, these guys were entrepreneurs. And as a result of what they've done, and then today you've got Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and everybody else, Bezos. This country gives us a platform. Early on, in Europe, there were debtor prisons. It's hard to be an entrepreneur. If you fail, they throw you in prison. Yeah. That kind of discourages taking a chance. Here, you might lose everything, but at least they're not throwing you in prison. You can get back up, brush off your knees and try again. And most entrepreneurs aren't successful the first time. They're successful the third, fourth, fifth time. There's some private equity funds or venture capital funds that will only invest with people who have failed before, because then they've already learned the lessons. Because you learn over time. And so a lot of people, the scariest is the kid right out of school who doesn't know because he hasn't failed.
Yeah, good point.
So I think, entrepreneurism and our court systems, provide for that. And that's why we have become the country that we've become.
That's great. I have to suggest the next time you're in Washington, D.C., visit the Center for the American Dream, which the Milken Institute basically funded this museum. It's in the old Riggs Bank building in Washington. We got a preview of it when I was just up in Washington because we were up there for business, and we had a preview before it opened. But it's all centered on the American dream. All the people you just talked about, even. It's the history of entrepreneurship in this country. And somebody like you, your picture should be in there, first of all, but they may add you when you go up there, but you would love that place. So
I'll put it top on my list.
Excellent. So now we're going to go to, unless you have anything else that you want to say.
No, no.
We're going to move right along. We're going to go to just a few questions that you can, fire off, whatever comes to mind. So,
sure.
What is your favorite book?
Favorite book? I would go with the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. That book, everybody knows the premise of the book, which is 10,000 hours, you become an expert at something. I truly believe that. I've lived that, but there's a lot of insight into that book. I think I like the way Gladwell looks at the world.
What's the best piece of advice that you ever received?
Think big, because you can do anything. And when you're selecting a business, a lot of people, I know some really smart people, but they picked a horrible platform. So they're successful, but you can be in anything you want. Think bigger. And if you fall short, the saying I always have is shoot for the moon. And if you fall short, you hit the stars, right? So I might always set very, very high expectations. I don't always hit my expectations, but where I do fall is farther than anybody else's expectations.
So we've talked a little about technology, but we didn't really touch on AI. What are your thoughts on AI?
Well, AI is very real. I mean, every single one of our employees uses it on a daily basis in every facet of that. What's happened over time is the cycles have shortened, and AI has just shortened them even more. So you could start a business utilizing AI with a handful of employees, and you could get accomplished more in a week or a month than you could have done in a year or 10 years a few years ago. So it's going to advance society exponentially. I don't buy into everybody's going to be out of work. There's going to be no more jobs because AI is going to replace them. That argument has been stated multiple times. 200 years ago, 67% of this country was in agriculture.
Right.
Now it's less than 1%. and it was then the computer was going to eliminate every job. And then the internet was going to eliminate every job. It's creating new jobs. It's creating better jobs and more fulfilling jobs. The mindless work is not there anymore. We don't have as many ditch diggers that we did.
Or cashiers, as you were saying earlier. Right?
But now you have people thinking.
Who's someone that you admire and why?
Person I admire? I would say my kids. My kids are who I admire because, I've seen what they've done, and, they had a lot more than I had, but they've taken it multiple steps farther. They could have gone one path of being, this is easy, I can go do this, but they've forged their own roads, and they have confidence, and they've all been very successful in their own way.
How many children do you have?
I have 3.
Great.
2 are officially off the payroll. My oldest is now in private equity in New York. She went to Princeton and is now doing that. My son, as every kid from Stanford does, has a startup. So he is off with his startup for the last year and a half. And my youngest went to my alma mater, Michigan, and she's a sophomore there.
Oh, great. That sounds great. So what is the thing that you're most grateful for today?
Oh, it's easy, my family.
I kind of figured that was a layup after that last question. I thought you would go there. Do you have any particular podcasts that you like or that you listen to?
I used to spend a lot of time in the car, on the phone talking to people. And then I grew up, we lived in New York. And when my wife was pregnant, we moved out to New Jersey and we dealt with that commute. And I swore to myself I would never have a commute again. I live less than a mile from this building.
Oh, wow.
So I am very rarely in the car for more than, 5 minutes. So I don't have a lot of time to listen to podcasts, and I don't have a lot of time to just, make, phone calls that aren't, more directed.
Sure. So you mentioned YPO earlier. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about, are there any other, would you consider that group to be like a mentor group, or are there other mentors that you've had?
From an actual mentor, I would say no. That's probably, the greatest, regret or mistake I've had. And advice I give people is go find a mentor. It will accelerate your career exponentially. Mm-hmm. I grew up more with a chip on my shoulder, and I was going to do it my own. And then I realized, wow, later in life, it would have been a lot easier if I hadn't done it that way.
Yeah.
But YPO is a perfect example. YPO is a peer group, so it's almost like peer mentoring.
Yeah.
And it allows you to learn from others' mistakes, so you don't make those. Learn from others' successes, so you can emulate those, and allows you to get from point A to point B much, much faster. A lot of times when we invest in companies or acquire companies, or partner with groups, I explain to them, I go, we're doing the deal because you're smart, you got a great business, and you'll be successful with or without me. Sure, we're going to provide capital, which will help speed things up. But the other thing besides capital that I'm going to provide you is I'm going to provide you with the experience that we've gained. So that we're going to get you from point A to point B, where you would have gone on your own in 10 years. We'll get you there in a year or two, because we will show you where the obstacles and the pitfalls are so you can avoid them. And we'll show you the things that aren't even on your radar screen that you can take advantage of.
So how has that gone for you in terms of, so you've obviously invested in some different companies and mentored people yourself. How has that, and GRUBBRR is probably the biggest example of that. Are there others, and how has that gone? Yeah,
we've acquired lots of companies. I've mentored people. I'm very big into entrepreneurism. I've spent a lot of time affiliated with a group called Young Entrepreneur Academy, where they take, middle school and high school kids, and they teach them about entrepreneurship. And at the end, they're actually starting businesses. Actually, my daughter started her company through that program. And she's probably a very good example of it, but there's been a lot of kids that have learned that, but just the skills that they've learned through that have empowered them for later in life. I'm involved in, CEO, which is another organization very similar to YPO. I sit on the Council 100 here in Florida. And I'm on the Orange Bowl committee because I think we were talking before this about our shared love for college football.
Yeah.
So I try to focus my time on things that I'm passionate about, and college football and entrepreneurism are at the top of that list.
Great. And how about hobbies?
I do absolutely love football. So this time of year is my favorite time of year. I have picked up pickleball over the last few years. And I play when it's not raining, which we've had quite a bit of rain, I usually am playing 4 or 5 times a week. Wow.
So, yeah. And I know there's a padel.
Yeah, we have a padel facility inside the building now. It's a group, Paddle X opened up a couple months ago, and we're done. I'll walk you over there. It's an incredible facility. These guys are doing a great job.
Great.
Paddle is probably percentage-wise the fastest growing sport in the world. Pickleball is the fastest growing by numbers.
Okay.
So it's like I've played a couple times now on paddle. It's a fun game.
Is it paddle or padel? I don't know.
It's pronounced both ways depending who and where in the world you are.
Okay. Very good. So last, how can people get in touch with you?
Obviously our website's at TouchSuite or GRUBBRR, and GRUBBRR is GRUBBR.com, or my email is szietz, Zietz, at TouchSuite or at GRUBBRR.com.
And you're on LinkedIn?
I am at LinkedIn, yeah.
There you go. Well, listen, Sam, this has been an incredible podcast. Thank you so much for doing this with us. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Locality's Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.